The Panthers are not quitting, and they want to play spoiler in Tampa while the Bucs look to bounce back following their loss to Dallas. That and more on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, host of Locked On Bucs. He is Julian Council at Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. Both shows here with you Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the shows. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, all one word, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. The Bucs are no longer in control of their own destiny. We're going to talk more about them coming up in a little bit. But Julian, we just did this like a couple of weeks ago when the Bucs traveled to Carolina. And I was talking then about, that was going to be a tough game. It was going to be a tough out. And Carolina has been a tough out for everyone. They're coming off of a solid win against the Arizona Cardinals, but obviously not in playoff contention anymore. They're mathematically eliminated. Have to assume that there's a lot of Panthers fans that are starting to get a little more optimistic about the future. What's going on, or what do you think about what's going on with the Panthers right now?
Yeah, it's been a completely different team in the second half of the season, James. You want to look at the first 8 weeks. They were 1-7. The last 7 weeks that they played are 3-4. And it wouldn't be crazy to say that this team could finish the last 9 weeks at 5-4 against a Bucs team who, quite honestly, I don't know how you felt a couple weeks ago. The Panthers should have beaten Tampa Bay in that game. They were by far the better team through 3 quarters. The Bucs only had 181 yards of offense through 3 quarters and exploded for 176 there in that fourth quarter. And still, Carolina had a chance. They went up with 30 seconds left. The defense just could not close out the game. And then when you get the defensive stop in overtime, Chuba Hubbard fumbles. So this is a team in Tampa that Carolina could have beaten. So we have seen how well they played against them, against Kansas City, and also against Philadelphia. And really, it's been the story, just the fact that Carolina's been able to be competitive, that they've been a pain in the rear of a lot of these teams down the stretch, where that's what you want to see out of a first-year head coach and a team in the situation that Carolina was in when Dave Canales took over. And you look outside of Carolina, the rest of the league, at some of the first-year head coaches, it's a mess in Tennessee with Brian Callahan. He cannot get anything figured out there. You look at New England, Drake May be good, but Gerard Mayo, that's not looking like it's going to be a long-term thing for him. It's been a mess for these first-year rookie head coaches outside of Mike Macdonald, where he inherited the best situation. So I think he's a good coach. But what can you say about him compared to what you can say about Dave Canales, what he's been able to accomplish here, getting the best out of Bryce Young since Bryce took over as a starter a couple weeks ago, and having a team that's been competitive? And I was surprised when I saw the line at 7.5. I feel like a team that could have beaten Tampa a couple weeks ago should get a little bit more respect based off of how they played the last 7 weeks, aside from that Dallas game about a week ago.
Yeah, it wasn't a comfortable win for the Bucs by any means. And, they've, since that game, of course, they've played better, and they've also played worse. You take a look at the way they just absolutely bludgeoned the Los Angeles Chargers, and then they turn around and they give Cooper Rush the best half of football he has ever played in his career. So it'll be interesting to kind of see the dynamic there of Carolina being on the road this time, Dave Canales returning to Tampa. One team is playing for pride, and for the future. The other team is fighting for their playoff lives. For the Bucs, the playoffs start now. So, it'll be interesting to see how that all goes. I'm not sure if I would have said that Carolina was the better team for 3 quarters, but they certainly looked like the better team in the first half.
Well, James, when a team has 282 yards compared to another team that has 181 and they're leading, feel like that's pretty clear they're the better team through 3 quarters. Just statistically speaking, and the scoreboard.
And we also need to handicap the fact that the Buccaneers have been the worst second quarter football team in the league this year. So, I kind of weigh that. If I remember that game correctly, a lot of self-inflicted wounds by the Bucs in that one. But, something that I was disappointed in, and I'm kind of wondering what the feeling is around this situation, was Jonathan Brooks. We hardly knew you. He suffers another ACL tear, deals with that. Chuba Hubbard's been absolutely fantastic. What was kind of the feeling around the return and then almost the immediate loss of Brooks? And is Chuba Hubbard basically going to be the lead guy moving forward, given what he's been able to accomplish this year?
Yeah, I don't think anyone expecting Jonathan Brooks to play a major role was being realistic about his 2024 season when he comes off of a torn ACL. He didn't practice at all the entirety of the offseason. It took until week 12 against Kansas City for him to debut. He was not going to step in here and have a smash and dash DeAngelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart part 2 in Carolina. Like, that was not going to play out this season. Maybe in 25 and beyond, that could have been the case, but Chuba Hubbard was going to be the 1A, the 1B, the 1C. He was going to be the guy for Carolina the rest of the way. And unfortunately, with this torn ACL, same knee in 13 months, it's going to be pretty tough to see him coming back next year and being a big part of this offense. So Chuba Hubbard will be the lead back again next season. I do think with Miles Sanders likely departing after the season, the Panthers should go out and find somebody, whether it be via the draft or finding someone on the cheap at running back to be that backup to Chuba Hubbard. But they have him under contract for 4 more seasons. Now, really, it's a 2-year, $15 million deal. But now you look at where things stand with Jonathan Brooks and his inability to stay healthy so far in his NFL career. Chuba Hubbard may be able to play out the lifetime of that deal, especially having a career year and now over 1,000 yards and having that walk-off touchdown a couple of weeks or last Sunday to really make up for a game that he fumbled away against Tampa Bay when Carolina was going to go down there and likely kick the game-winning field goal.
Yeah. Again, I'll say turnabout's fair play. The Bucs finally got a chance to win a game in overtime, and they did, because that's not something that has ever happened. I will say at least Carolina got to touch the ball in overtime, which is also something the Bucs hadn't gotten to do until that particular game. But, one last thing, from the Carolina side heading into this, their defense has been, I won't say great, but their defense has been really, really solid over the course of this streak here, where even though they have a losing record, they have fought tooth and nail. They have contended with some of the better offenses in the NFL. What's been the catalyst on the defensive side of the ball here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree. The defense has been terrible. They gave up 30 points against the Chiefs. They gave it 26 to Tampa. And after they had been dominant in those 3 quarters, like I mentioned, you give up 181 and you give 176 there in that third quarter. That fourth quarter, you can't get a stop. You have 30 seconds left. Your offense went down the field. They took the lead and you couldn't get off the field. And you then get to stop in overtime. But no, the defense has not been good. They gave it 22 to the Eagles, but also gave up over 200 yards rushing 4 straight weeks now, 30 points to the Cowboys, 3 touchdowns to Cooper Rush. And I know you just going through that after what happened on Sunday evening, then 30 to the Cardinals. Like, the defense is not good. The talent is not there. They've had injuries this season. There's a lot of people questioning whether Ejiro Evero, who would have been in line for the Rams or Packers job had he not been held hostage by David Tepper this past cycle, which I find it so interesting. 2 cycles in a row, Ejiro Evero interviews for the head coaching job in Carolina, but he's not seen as adequate to be the head coach, but yet he's not allowed to go find another job as a DC. And now everyone wants him out, even though you can look at some situations of why things have not necessarily worked out. But when you have the worst defense in the history of the organization, you probably cannot come back and be the coordinator next year. And that's not to say he can't be a good DC, but no, the defense has not been good. They have been better as far as getting after the passer in recent weeks and getting home, which is a nice thing. They have gotten some takeaways, which is something they struggled to do last year. I think they have 16 now on the season after, I believe, only having about 11 a year ago. But by no means has this been a solid defense at any point this season.
So I guess that's why I asked the question. From the outside looking in, it seemed like they were contending and being able to hold their own against some of the better offenses.
It's really been Bryce Young and the Panthers offense, like, not being a complete joke. And that was the issue earlier in the season. Like week 1 and week 2, when he's playing terrible, the Panthers are giving up 47 points. They're giving up 26 against Los Angeles. So it's not like they were, cover themselves in greatness during that stretch either, but the offense was just inept. And once the offense became a unit that could move the ball up and down the field, like on Sunday, was the first time since 2018 that the Panthers scored a touchdown on their first 3 possessions. So that's a long time for them, and they have not been able to have a touchdown drive oftentimes in the last couple of years on the opening drive when everything's scripted. So they have been better at maintaining football, getting down the field, and Bryce Young taking care of it and being able to do some things that they wanted to see out of them when they drafted him. So that's really what it's been, not necessarily the defense. It's been the offense has been able to keep up. But you can only do so much when your defense is giving up 30 points a week and giving up 200 yards on the ground, just getting absolutely gashed.
All right. Well, the Buccaneers are playing for their season. That is coming up next on today's Crossover Thursday episodes of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That has definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It even brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium feature. For me, the best feature, hands down, is canceling those unwanted subscriptions. There were some that I was paying for twice. There were some that I was paying for and my wife was paying for, and we didn't realize that we were doubling up. We each thought, we were the only one paying for it. It has helped me save a ton of money. Plus, with their goals feature, I have been able to automatically set aside money for savings, set aside money for our family vacation next year. There's no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Thank you again for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every single day. The new Locked On NFL is here, and it's twice every day. You got the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your morning. You got the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins later on for some NFL talk. Add in Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make it your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Let's talk about the Bucs because they're stupid and they lost to the Dallas. 0-6 in the Baker Mayfield era in prime time for the Buccaneers, not counting the postseason because they waxed the Philadelphia Eagles in prime time in the playoffs last year. But that was not a good time, and it has left the Bucs no longer in control of their own destiny. The Falcons are now in first place in the division. Not too worried about that. I don't think they're going to beat the Washington Commanders. So a win on Sunday means everything for the Buccaneers. Here's flat out the situation. If the Bucs lose to the Panthers and the Falcons beat the Commanders, the Falcons win the NFC South. Period. Game over. If the Falcons win and the Bucs win, then all the Bucs fans are Panthers fans in the final week of the season because they would need a Panthers win over the Falcons. So that Sunday night loss was brutal. However, you still have Bucky Irving, who is 80 yards away from being the first Buccaneers running back to rush for 1,000 yards since Doug Martin did it back in 2014. That's been a very long time. You have Mike Evans, who needs 91 yards a game for the rest of the season to still manage to get 1,000 on the year, even though he missed 3.5 games. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But you're going up against a defense, as you just laid out, is susceptible to the run. They are susceptible to the pass. They are susceptible to a lot of things that the Buccaneers did not expose in that first meeting. So for the Bucs, the game plan needs to be simple. You need to run the ball. And I've gotten a lot of hate, Julian, in my YouTube comments and on social media talking about how that's that's the backbone of the team right now is the running attack. And I have Baker defenders all over telling me that I'm an idiot and I'm a moron. And obviously I hate Baker Mayfield, even though I was the one pounding the table for him when Brady retired the first time, let alone the second time. I have been a Baker dude, but that's when the team is most effective. You go back to that Dallas game and you take a look at when they're starting to fall behind and they finally put together a touchdown drive. And who were the ones that got the ball? Bucky Irving touched the ball 4 times. Mike Evans touched the ball twice. Bucky Irving gets the touchdown. Give the ball to Bucky Irving. Give the ball to Rachaad White in spite of the fumble, which was just a great defensive play by Deron Bland. You got to tip your hat. But you have to continue to run the ball because that's when we see Baker start to be able to move the ball down the field, start to be able to feel more comfortable and open things up because he knows that he can rely on number 7 and number 1 lining up behind him to get over 5 yards a carry, which is what they've been doing over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. We go back to that game against the Panthers, and the Bucs ran for 236 yards and had 6.1 yards per touch. And speaking about Bucky Irving, you brought him up during that crossover as somebody who's going to be important in that game. And once Tampa finally figured it out offensively in that fourth quarter, it was because they leaned on Bucky Irving. On 2 of those scoring drives, he had 113 yards total on the ground and in the air as a receiver on those 2 scoring drives. And that was a big deal. And he went out late in that game. And I was concerned, at least not really concerned, but from the Tampa perspective, I can see there would have been probably some concern about whether they're going to be able to close that game out with Rachaad White instead in the backfield, which they were able to do when they got the ball the second time in that overtime. I go back to this game this past Sunday. Things changed for the Cardinals against the Panthers once they started leaning on James Conner. So if Tampa Bay comes out from the get-go and decides Bucky Irving's going to be our guy, which they decided to do finally in the fourth quarter in this game a couple of weeks ago, that should bode well for them against a defense that is just not going to be able to stop the run. They're probably giving up 200 yards rushing yet again. It's just going to come down to, is it going to be 6 yards a clip that they're giving up, or are they going to make him earn it a little bit more and make it be about 4.5 yards per clip every time that the Bucs run the ball on Sunday? So that certainly is a key factor in this game on both sides of the ball for both teams.
Yeah, and selfishly, I want Bucky and Rachaad to go absolutely ballistic because that'll help me win a fantasy championship, and it's been a while since I've gotten one of those. But something else to kind of keep in mind before I flip sides of the ball here was against the Panthers, Mike Evans still wasn't all the way back. You could tell that he was still kind of, I don't want to say hampered. They were not utilizing Mike Evans the way Mike Evans usually gets utilized. He was still working his way back from that injury. He wasn't his regular self. Well, he has now been his regular self the last couple of weeks. So that's a little bit of a change compared to the first meeting. Hopefully Baker isn't trying to force feed him the ball and causing, turnovers, but, Panthers fans should be aware that Mike is going to get fed the ball because I think Baker wants to get him that 1,000 yards even more than Mike wants to get his 1,000 yards. So, the key number is 91, but we've seen Evans go for over 200 against Carolina in Tampa.
I find it interesting, though. You talk about he wasn't his, healthy self, and he had 8 receptions on 12 targets for 118 yards and a touchdown in that game. So if that's not Mike Evans healthy, then I don't really want to see what Mike Evans healthy is going to look like on Sunday down at Raymond James.
Yeah, he, the full route tree hadn't quite been opened up for him at that point. I think that was the game that they were kind of like, okay, we can start to really open this thing up for Mike. But he's had some classics against the Panthers that I'm sure they would rather not see again. Bucs fans are really hoping for it because they want that 1,000 yards. But real quick about this defense, they, as I mentioned, they give up the best half of production in Cooper Rush's career in the first half against Dallas. They allowed 23 points in that first half. Up until that game, since the bye week, the Buccaneers defense had been the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL over the course of, 4 weeks, allowing just 15 points per game. Then they shut it down in the second half. They allowed a field goal on Dallas's first possession of the half, never let them score again. So you saw Mike Edwards return from injury in a limited role last week. They have now opened up the 21-day practice window for Jordan Whitehead to be able to return. Still kind of less than likely that Antoine Winfield Jr. is back for this game. But again, they're starting to get some of these key pieces back. They're starting to get a little healthier, but they've been playing good defense other than really one half against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. So it again, you lean on the run game. You rely on your defense to try to force Bryce Young into some mistakes and hopefully not make Adam Thielen look like he's 23 again. And, the defense it's been a little bit better than a lot of Bucs fans want to give credit for over the course of the last 5 games.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know with that secondary being injured, that might be an opportunity for Carolina in this game on Sunday, which I'm sure we're going to talk about soon. The keys to victory, at least 3 things they must do to win this game. But yeah, that Bucs defense, let them down against Dallas on Sunday night, and it's crazy that 2 weeks in a row, Cooper Rush to be able to do what he did against a team in the NFL. So we'll see how it plays out on Sunday in this matchup.
Dak Prescott's job is in danger. Not really. Keys to victory coming up next on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Buccaneers are 8.5-point home favorites over the Carolina Panthers with an over-under of 49.5. They are also still the favorites to win the NFC South at -135, with the Falcons right behind at +115. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. And let's start with the road underdogs. Julian, what are the keys for the Panthers to get a big upset and basically allow Dave Canales to destroy what's left of his former team season?
Yeah, I think ideally, for Panther fans, they would love to get the win, but then also watch Atlanta lose to Washington, because the Bucs fans are like, damn, how do we lose this game to the Panthers? So you feel like you've spoiled it for them, and then the next week go and beat Atlanta and then hand Tampa Bay the division. I think that would be the ideal scenario moving forward this season. But as far as this game goes, they're going to give up yardage on the ground. And that's just the reality. This is a run defense that's been awful. It's been historically bad for this franchise, and it's not going to get any better. And they're likely going to go up 200 yards rushing again for the 5th straight week. But if they can make Tampa Bay work for it a little bit more than it did last time, that may lead to success for Carolina. Then also on the offensive side of the ball for Carolina, Chuba Hubbard right now is the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, coming off of a great performance on Sunday against Arizona in that win. They got to lean on him and continue to find some success on the ground like they have so far this season, with Hubbard having his first 1,000-yard rushing season and clearly going to be the guy moving forward at running back for Carolina in 2025 and maybe even in the years to come after that. And then I think about with the pass game, there's guys got to step up. Xavier Legette may be able to play. He missed last week with a hip injury, also dealing with a groin and a wrist injury he's going to have to take care of after the season of surgery. Him and Jalen Coker are some young guys that the Panthers really want to get more involved. Same thing with JT Sanders, who, since going out of a neck injury and he missed that Tampa game back against KC, he has not been targeted but 2 times, did not get targeted on Sunday. Getting those young guys involved, knowing too that Whitehead, Antoine Winfield Jr. are likely not going to play in this game. Maybe this is an opportunity for the Panthers to take advantage of a banged up secondary. So got to find a way to not just get totally gashed, make them work for it, find success in the run game. They get some of your young rookie receivers involved in the pass game so you can take advantage of a banged up secondary.
All right. And then for the Bucs, it's pretty simple. They got to wake up, they got to feed Bucky and Mike, and they got to stay the course. So they need to understand that they've already used their mulligan here. They were allowed to get 1 loss coming out of the bye. They had to go 6-1 the rest of the way if they were going to win the division. Thought that loss was going to be to the Chargers. Instead, it was to the Cowboys. Playoffs for the Buccaneers start now. They have to wake up and understand that situation, and they have to play to that level. This is officially a playoff game. If they don't win, they're probably going home. So live up to the moment. Do it in front of your home fans. A lot of those people in the stands are probably getting tickets or probably got tickets yesterday for Christmas. They're excited to go and wear their new Buccaneers jerseys and get all hyped and give Dave Canales the business on the sideline. So live up to the moment, play to the way that you're capable of, and you shouldn't have any problem. Then, of course, feed Bucky and Mike. I've already talked about it. Those two are the drivers of the team. You mentioned it earlier. Mike Evans in their first meeting, 118 yards and a touchdown on 8 receptions. Bucky Irving had 25 carries for 152 and a touchdown. He had another 33 yards receiving. He was absolutely dominant. So don't steer away from that. The Bucs against Dallas decided to open up passing the ball over and over and over against a team that was allowing almost 5.5 yards per rush at home.
Insane.
So Liam Cohen, I think, outsmarted himself for that game plan. You don't need to outsmart yourself. Keep it simple. Give Bucky the ball, give Mike the ball, give Rashad the ball, go home with the win, and then stay the course. The defense has been better than people want to give it credit for. They had a shutdown half against Dallas. In the second half, just didn't get enough help from the offense. You do exactly what you did to Chuba Hubbard the first time. You held him to less than 50 yards rushing. Adam Thielen had 99 yards, which was, okay, that was surprising. Don't let him do that again. But Bryce Young with almost 300 passing yards in that game, you cannot let that happen. You shut down Chuba. You have to get pressure on Bryce Young. You can't let him throw all over the place all day long. So Julian, it's going to be an interesting one. It means a ton to this Buccaneers team. Does not mean as much to the Panthers over the course of the rest of this season, but could mean a lot on building towards being. My son said to me the other day, he goes, the Panthers might be kind of scary here in a year or two. And I said, you know what? They're starting to trend in that direction. I would assume you're going to be talking a lot on your show about using draft picks and free agent capital on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, we'll get to that in April. We got to focus more on who's actually going to be calling the defensive plays and what the scheme's going to be before we can talk about what players out of college the Panthers should be drafting. And, of course, you have free agency that happens before the draft. And you got to figure out which players you want to bring back, who you want to extend. I know people always want to skip ahead to the draft. A lot more things need to happen before we can really get into the draft evaluations of guys that you hope will help this team. And they have not necessarily done a great job through the years at drafting recently. Now, I do think this draft class, Leggett, I don't know if he's going to be a number one receiver. I highly doubt it at this point in time, but he'll be somebody that can help him down the road. Brooks, that's one that already feels like, oh, man, I don't know if that's ever going to work out. But Trevin Walsh has been good for them at linebacker. He's out for the rest of the season, though, with a shoulder injury. And there's some other guy like JT Sanders. We'll see what this draft class is able to do. This rookie class, you got UDFAs like Damani Richardson, who's likely starting again at safety. You have Jalen Coker, I mentioned, at wide receiver. A young rookie class that you can try to build around your quarterback, Bryce Young, which is really the main piece. So, yeah, should be an interesting game. We'll see if Carolina can play spoiler for the second week in a row against a team who, again, I feel like they definitely should have beat a couple weeks ago.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for this Crossover Thursday episode. Please check out everything that Julian is doing at Julian Council. I am at JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribing to these shows on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as your favorite podcast platforms. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we want to thank you so much for joining us right here on a Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.